Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
Hello. Thank you for coming today. And thank you to the organizers for putting on today's event. And it's really an honor to be here. And it's an honor to start off the day. And I congratulate you for getting up so early to make this early start to the day. So my talk this morning, Seeking Completeness, is not meant to make you feel comfortable at the start of the day. My talk is meant to challenge you, and I hope that it does that. And I beg of you in advance your patience as we push through some of the ideas that I want to communicate this morning. When we know about the injustices that exist in the world, we cannot unknow. When we see the injustices that exist in the world, we cannot unsee them. And the key principle is that knowing confers responsibility. Just for 1 second, let me talk about the place where my heart rests, which is Gaza in Palestine. And let me just put you in the position that you can't unknow what's going on in Gaza, Palestine. Now, it's the beginning of the year, according to the general calendar, right? And the beginning of the year in Gaza is, of course, full of goodness, but it's also full of injustice and suffering. And it's difficult, actually, to remain positive when you look at the situation right now in Gaza. The Gaza Strip, which is obviously one of the bits which are left of Palestine, one of the two sort of segments that are left on the map, is under blockade, which affects the economy and the people's ability to leave. So it's the pedestrian and economic in and out from this very, very, very small piece of land. The Gaza Strip is under military occupation, most obviously today, whenever Israeli drones flying over above people's heads, literally terrorizing the population. And the general image of oppression in Gaza continues, as it has done for decades now. People generally suffer from poverty. People suffer because they are imprisoned in their own tiny strip of land. Most of the population, or almost not most of the population, depending on the statistics you look at, suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. That is, trauma as a result of the violence and the war, most obviously during the last war in November 2012. The Palestinians, or Palestine as much as it is a state, has very, very few allies. In fact, Palestinians are extremely politically weak in the grand scheme of things. So, enough of Gaza and Palestine for now, but you can't say that you don't know what's going on in Gaza now. And so, I'm kind of playing a trick on you, right? Because knowing confers responsibility, as I said. And I'm well aware, I really am well aware, that when we look at the world and when we look at the injustices in the world, the situation can be overwhelming. And in some ways, it's easier emotionally and on other levels to just actually turn off and not look at the injustices. Sometimes we don't know what to do. Sometimes we become despairful. It's difficult, and I'm aware of that. And there is rampant injustice. There is oppression in all societies, and there is perpetual war across many parts of our world. Today, at the beginning of 2014, don't worry, I will get more positive in the coming moments, right? But at the beginning of 2014, there are almost 30 million slaves in the world. There are millions of refugees, most of them Palestinians according to some statistics. And today, as we sit here in this conference, in basically absolute luxury actually, let us remember that while we're sitting here, thousands of children will be dying, mostly in Africa, from preventable diseases and from preventable hunger. These thousands of children will die living in poverty, abuse, and misery. So my appeal, or one of my main appeals this morning, is that we must not shy away from accepting a heartfelt impression of the wrongness of these injustices and the wrongness of the sufferings that do exist in the world. Because it's our conscientious suffering that makes us human. I remember when I was a young man, I guess 18 or 19, I was very obsessed with the idea that it's all very well having an intellect, and it's all very well having knowledge and smartness and intellectual power, but without heart, it's basically useless for the world, and basically useless for one's own personal development, which I guess is the kind of modern world title for spiritual happiness. So what we have to do, I think, is that we have to at least focus on one kind of suffering, or on one situation of suffering, or on one part of the world where suffering is rampant, apparently, and focus our energies onto trying to stop it in at least that one place. No one can be expected, literally, in absolute terms, no one can be expected to know about all of the injustices in the world, or to even care about all of the injustices in the world, or to campaign for all of the injustices in the world. It's just not realistic, of course. So let's take the kind of dramatic burden off our shoulders, and let's at least try to do something. We have to find something which can personally impassion us and personally motivate us. We have to find our own role. And what I mean by that is we have to find what is best suited for us to try and combat these injustices. I keep saying these injustices, and it's somehow abstract. But I'm talking about all of the kinds of suffering in the world that are wrong. I'm talking about the occupation in Palestine. I'm talking about poverty and such things. Once we find our role, the way that we embody our role will evolve over time. So for me, just to mention my situation for a moment, I like to feel that I found my role, at least over the last couple of years. I'm kind of, as I said before, my heart is very much in Gaza. And on another level, I guess I could admit that I'm somehow also kind of obsessed with Gaza on a mindful level. And of course this is good because it helps with my work in raising awareness for Gaza. Part of what I feel is important to do is to influence other people to not only just understand what's going on in Gaza, but to be outraged about it, to care about it, and most crucially and most importantly, to actually do something about it. So part of influencing others, once we ourselves have acknowledged an injustice, is absolutely key. So we must not shy away from sharing our vision and our compassion with our friends and family and networks. For me, the reason why I chose to focus on Gaza over the last couple of years, or chose to focus my filmmaking and journalism on a clear injustice like the situation in Gaza, is because I basically wouldn't respect myself if I didn't do it. So in this sense, it's a totally selfish endeavor. I honestly couldn't look myself in the mirror if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, because for me, it brings meaning into my life. And I hope that on my deathbed, or wherever I may die, maybe it won't be in a bed, I will be able to, for a moment, look at my life and say, okay, I tried. That's how I see it, and that's my personal motivation. And what the last couple of years, particularly the last year and a half, has taught me is that we can make a difference. We really can make a difference. You know, A few days ago, I was in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I was asked to commemorate, I was asked to give a speech to commemorate what's known as the first war on Gaza, the operation, the onslaught of winter 2008-9, known as Kaslet, the 22-day Gaza war. So I gave a talk at that event. And that war, which was 5 years ago from just recently, I didn't even know that that war was going on in Gaza. In winter 2008-9, in 2009, I couldn't even tell you where Gaza was on the map, or maybe I'm being a little bit harsh on myself, but I didn't know what was going on at all. And many activists today are in a sense new to the situation. At the same time, I only went to Gaza for the first time last summer. And since then, I've had some objective success in raising awareness. In fact, I hope among thousands of people who now care about Gaza more than they otherwise wouldn't have if they'd seen my videos or etc. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have been able to do that. But I put it in strange terms perhaps because there was nothing that stopped me from doing it. I just decided to do it. So in fact, anyone could have done what I did. So there's nothing brave or heroic about it or special about it. I just did it, as I said, even for selfish reasons, because I couldn't respect myself if I didn't do what I did. So I hope that those facts, aligned in such a way, can inspire you today, perhaps, to do something similar, perhaps, if you feel so inclined. The very kind introduction to me before I started this talk attributed to me activist. And I do see myself as an activist, but let's look at what that means. Because I think, in a sense, I don't know about the Malaysian context, but certainly in Western Europe, which is my experience, of course, because I'm British, the word activist or activists are somehow, they're kind of crazy, right? It's like, who would want to be friends with an activist? Yeah, truly. It's, in a sense, being dirted, the word, by the mainstream media, and even, in a sense, by culture. People are seen, activists are seen as kind of anarchistic, rebellious, disruptive, destructive, disrespectful, or radical. Actually, they're all true. But you have to look at it with the cup half full, because we're disrespecting injustices. We're being radical against a radical injustice. We are trying to destruct something which should be destructed, destructed. So actually, it's true, but it depends on whether you think progressively or conservatively. Now, in 2014, over the last 10 years or however so long, we've been blessed with technologies and development in the world, technological development in the world, that allows us to reach out to people, to communicate with people, to connect with people, to share stories, realities, photographs, video, and everything as we all know it in the modern age, with people thousands of miles away. This is an absolutely, this is an absolutely massive blessing. And today, a massive social change can be made simply by harnessing the technologies that we carry in our pocket. And I'm not giving some speech which is like making Facebook sound like the be-all, end-all. I'm really not. But the point is that let's exploit these technologies. Let's exploit these technologies to try and make a better world. And so, social media activism, broadly under that title, that is using Facebook, Twitter, websites, new technologies, to share the realities of injustice with people, to wake them up to those injustices, to impassion them, and to move them to action. Let's do that. Let's exploit those technologies. And we can't say that we don't know. The world today is so small, particularly as a result of these technologies. In fact, I'm going to romanticize the technologies a bit for a second. The technologies are beautiful. They connect people thousands of miles away with what's happening here. These talks and the amazing ideas that will be shared later by the other speakers will wake people up thousands of miles away watching the videos. It's a beautiful reality. And the way that the social media works, when we make a post, we share a photo, we send a message, we upload a video, and etc. They may seem like small tasks, but they can make an absolutely massive difference to people's consciousness 4,000 miles away, 5,000 miles away. And these technologies are very, generally speaking, very democratic, because we can shape the world in the way that we see the world. We can express our vision, and we can share that with others. I'll stop with the whole romanticizing of the technologies now, don't worry. The thing is that one of the fundamentals here is that to have progress, to have change in the world, to have political change in the world, which is what's required for most progress in the world, we have to actually accept that there's a problem. We have to problematize. And for us to problematize, we cannot deny the reality of the injustices that we know that exist. We cannot pretend that we don't know what's going on in Gaza. So I want to spend the next while of this talk talking about some of the concepts that are very dear to me and that inform my work and that perhaps, I hope, can inform your work or your activism in the future. So I remember, I think it was in 2010, I shared a Facebook status and I said, if I was religious, which I'm not, I would be a Muslim. And because we're in the Islamic Arts Museum in a Muslim majority country, I thought I would use some Islamic concepts. So, for me, I find really clear and beautiful, potent Islamic manifestations of universal human concepts about activism. Just to be clear, I find concepts about activism in Islam very beautifully enshrined and communicated. No, the most basic one is that towards injustices, there is the hadith, and I cannot remember, forgive me, I cannot remember the precise general English language version of the hadith, but if you cannot correct the situation by your hand, at least speak up about it. If you cannot speak up about it, at least hate it in your heart. And I hope that that resonates with the things I've been saying earlier in this speech. And I think that that hadith, or my kind of botched version or interpretation of it, is central, and we should really embrace that. And also, notice that that hadith, in looking at injustices and wrongs in the world, it doesn't say throw money at the injustice, it doesn't say throw aid and charity at the injustice. It's specific, it's general. And we should be innovative, strategic, and smart in how we apply our personal skills and the roles of our societies in trying to combat injustices. Particularly, I'm thinking, as you probably have guessed, of the situation in Gaza, right? Sure, there is a ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the humanitarian crisis is caused by a political crisis. It's caused by a historic crisis of occupation, oppression, and apartheid. And so we can't just throw money at the situation and hope for it to get better, because it won't. So the second principle, which I really love in Islam, is jihad. And obviously, yes, I'm not one of those crazy people that thinks this is about suicide bombings or something like this, right? I actually know what it means. So for me, this is one of the most beautiful concepts in Islam, perhaps the most beautiful, is this enshrined duty, that we have a duty to do something about injustices in the world. And for me, this is, how could a religion be complete without such a principle enshrined in it? And we should learn from this, that we should leverage political power, individually and collectively in groups and in societies, to combat the superpowers of war, greed, and misery in the world. We should wage strategic jihad, strife, struggle, effort, will, against these superpowers of evil. You know, in the media, generally, certainly in the Western media, the media tells us or makes us feel very disenfranchised most of the time. It makes us feel disempowered and perhaps even disillusioned, certainly disconnected from injustices and situations going on perhaps thousands of miles away in the world. It often tells us, well, you know, if you can't see it with your own eyes directly in front of you, it's okay, keep it out of mind, don't think about it, you can't do anything about it. So we have to combat that. And the principle of jihad says to us that if there's an injustice, we have to go against it. Now, for me, this principle of struggle, strife, jihad in Islam, I allow it to inspire me or to affect me, particularly when I'm doing something which otherwise would be difficult to do. So, for example, after the war in Gaza in November 2012, I traveled around the world to, I think, about 13 different countries and gave dozens of talks in different places in less than 2 months in 13 different countries. It was the most exhausting thing I've ever done in my life. It totally took it out of me, and I almost had to cancel the whole trip twice because I became so ill from the exhausting experience of all the days, apart from like I had 2 days off, talking about the situation in Gaza, trying to raise awareness and inspire people to care. So for me, I wake up in New Zealand one day, Malaysia the next day, America the next day, God knows how many aeroplane flights and etc. Definitely not a glamorous experience. And for me, that was my jihad. That was my my struggle to raise awareness. Let me move on now to another concept which really inspires me and has inspired really all of my work over the last year and a half. I don't know whether people generally know about this, but it's an Islamic concept called itkan, and I may well be pronouncing that totally wrong, my bad. But the principle, as far as I know this, is a sense of the necessity to work with quality and to produce beauty, art, and perfection, a kind of completeness of output, to dot the I's and to cross the T's in what we do. And I'm a little bit perfectionist, as my friends will know, right? So this plays totally to my personality vices, which is why I spend ridiculous amounts of times editing my videos and stuff like this. But this principle of itkan really affects me and really inspires me to always to try and do things as beautifully as possible and as well thought out as possible and as completely, as wholly, as holistically as possible. Yeah, it totally increases my OCD and attention to detail. But I think that it's a really beautiful concept which we should really enshrine in our personal vision and personal roles. So the last concept, and I don't know how much time I've got left because the little countdown timer here has gone to sleep, so I don't know how much time I've got left. But anyway, the last concept I really wanted to share with you, right, I'm so passionate about this, is in Islam there is the concept of the ummah, the community. And obviously people have different impressions, interpretations and feelings towards this concept, but as far as I know, there is the Islamic community, the Islamic ummah, and there is also the sense of a global ummah, that is, a global humanity. And without this concept, the whole pyramid falls down, right? The whole campaigning, motivation, the whole vision for an improved world, it's gone. Because unless we care about others in principle and theory, unless we want for others what we have for ourselves, unless we have the compassion to see others as our brothers and sisters, there's not really any hope, is there? So this is why it's such a beautiful concept. And I don't have any time for patriotism or nationalism. I don't think of myself as British very much. But in the 21st century, we're constantly impressed with the ideas that we belong to a nation or a citizen of this country, or these people are other, they're not like us. And obviously the most otherized people in the world are Muslims today. So the beautiful concept about the Ummah in Islam is that it absolutely confronts this sense of separation, this false sense of separation, because we're all humans, and we have to see everyone like that, even those that do us harm. So those are some of the concepts which motivate me on a daily basis. The clear duty to confront injustice, to wage jihad against injustice, to struggle, to strive against injustice. To do so with itqan, beauty, completeness, holisticness, in the interest of the human community, the Ummah. So before I leave you in peace, I just wanted to let you know, in case you don't know, that 2014 is being set aside as the year of solidarity with the Palestinian people. So it's kind of, 2014 is the year of solidarity with Palestine. And so this is a reason to be hopeful about the Palestinian situation. Take all of the reasons to be hopeful that we can, right? And let us allow ourselves to be inspired by this upcoming state of increased organization, awareness, and solidarity for the Palestinian situation. Excuse me. Let us, crucially, and I'm appealing to you and emotionally blackmailing you, let us make commitments to actually do something about the injustices that we care about. Let us make commitments. Because caring really isn't enough. Caring is very nice. It's a very nice emotional experience, perhaps or not, perhaps, as I'll talk about in my next talk this afternoon. Caring isn't enough. Commitments is a good start. Intentions are a good start. Actions are good. Achievements are great. So let us make commitments. Let us not be overwhelmed by the rampant injustices that we know that exist. Let us focus on those that we feel most passionate about. Let us make those commitments, and let us move towards a world which we would prefer to live in and prefer to leave for our children. And let us do this because without this effort, without this state of determination and being, we would not be complete. And it's my experience, and the experience I've seen in the states of other activists, those crazy people, right? Crazy. In the states of other activists and campaigners and people of conscience and conscientious objectors and etc. In these people, and as I say, also my experience, without this commitment to activism or whatever you want to call it, there's no sense of completeness in terms of one's self. And I really mean that. I'm not romanticizing this or something like that. And I remember before I started making documentaries and etc. In October 2010 it was, a man who inspired me very, very, very much. His name is Paul J. He's Canadian, I think. Canadian, yeah, or American, Canadian, I think. He said, to loosely quote him, by the way, he's a journalist and a filmmaker as well, and he started a news organization called the Real News Network, which is an amazing organization. Everyone should Google that, by the way. So I give him a little plug, right? He said in a really important speech, which was very personal and absolutely inspiring for me, and very, very important for me. He said this, talking about the development of the Real News Network. He said, if I am going to take myself seriously, I will have to believe in my own rhetoric. And if I'm not doing the thing that I think is most meaningful with my life, I feel empty inside. I feel unhappy. And that totally was like someone hitting me over the head, right? I was like, wow, yeah, okay, I better wake up. And that absolutely impacted me and all of the decisions I took in the coming years after October 2010. So thanks to Paul for that. But the key principle is, if we're not doing the thing that we think is most meaningful and important with our lives, we will not feel complete. We will feel empty inside. So let us not fall into that state of emptiness. Let us allow ourselves for our hearts not to become rusted over with apathy and passivity. Let us wake up and let us make those commitments in 2014. And God knows, for our own spiritual health, we need to do that. Happy New Year. Thank you very much.